Welcome, Ventura, to Get Moving TV. I'm Dr. Chris Landon, and I serve as your host. Here in Ventura, we have a remarkable set of resources, both here at the Ventura Adult Community Education, but more importantly in our community. And Ventura, for some reason, attracts some extraordinary people. I was fortunate enough many years ago to be on a television show with a man named Leonard Nimoy on Next Wave TV, and the set that you see behind me was stolen directly from that experience. Everything I know about interviewing, I learned from spending 10 minutes with him. He asked me the questions that I already knew the answers to. He said, Dr. Landon, do you mind if I call you Chris? I said, no. Do you mind if I call you Mr.? Because, of course, all knew him as Mr. Spock. So when I saw, I forget, it was a campaign on Indiegogo or something where a son wanted to honor his father, I saw that there was a set of Spock ears up for sale, and the person making them was blocks away from the studio. So we're here today with Steve Neill. Steve, welcome to Ventura. And
well, thank you.
How long have you been here?
Let's see. I've been here. It will be. God, I'm going on my third year now.
Yeah, it just seems like yesterday that you were.
I mean, you know, a little over 2 years. So, you know, but it does seem like yesterday.
Well, the reason I come here is because these kids who take the courses and are behind the cameras and behind the Macs and learning Photoshop and end up at lynda.com and KEY TV, sometimes they got lost on their way, and they were not going to be college students. They didn't know quite what they were going to be, and really, everybody has a separate arc and path and journey. When did your journey begin to construct a certain vehicle for a science fiction show? So you're in your studio now. You're rebuilding something for the Smithsonian. What is it that you're rebuilding?
Well, I'm building a model of the Enterprise from the original TV show, and not for the Smithsonian, for the Museum of Science Fiction, which will open in Washington next year.
That's right.
And so this is a museum dedicated to science fiction and how it's influenced our lives, which is, I mean, it's huge, obviously. We owe a lot to science fiction, and so it's honoring that fact. And what they wanted was a very realistic model of the Enterprise as used by the studios in those days. And because I had built one before, they called on me to do it. So.
You have a website and instructional. Well, we get to follow you around, which is an incredible thing, and how the teeny tiny little figures in there, and the clearness of and the network of people who supply you with parts is incredible. So how did you start out? Did you know when you were 3 that science fiction and was going to be the?
Yeah, I did. Honestly, I did. I mean. When I was just very, very little, I mean, my biggest interest was astronomy and aerospace. I mean, we're talking at 5, 6 years old. Luckily, I was born into a family that was very talented. It worked both in the arts and in sciences. So I was surrounded by that kind of atmosphere all the time. But I loved science fiction. Of course, by the time I got past Forbidden Planet and other films, and they used to still films like that. Star Trek came along, and that really captured my interest a great deal. But the one that really did it the most to me was 2001: A Space Odyssey. When I went to see that film, I had an epiphany. It just completely amazed me, and I felt connected with it. I felt that there was something there I related to, and I kept going back, seeing that film over and over again. And then I learned everything I could about Kubrick, and that's when I realized I don't want to go to school for 12 years of college to become an astrophysicist. I want to make films about people who are astrophysicists and figure out a way to get us to the stars. And so that kind of led me on that path, and I started making short films in high school. And when I got out of high school, I made contact with the American Zoetrope, which was owned and operated by Francis Ford Coppola. And they had an article in the newspaper. They wanted to help young new filmmakers. Well, I took it quite literally and called them up, said, I'm a new young filmmaker fresh out of high school. I've been making short films and I could use your help. So they invited me down, and so I went to Francis's office. Francis invited me in, who's a wonderful human being, by the way. And I showed him my 8mm movies with sound on his pull-down screen in his office. George Lucas was sitting there the whole time, too. So that's really where I got my start.
Well, I hope everyone gets to be that fortunate lucky. I was at a meeting.
I was bodacious.
Bodacious, yeah. Well, that was one of the, I was at a dinner party and we're talking about what is it you really want to tell your kids? And that is, you can call up anybody.
You can.
They are human beings.
They are, absolutely.
And they
sure.
will respond. They're not up on their pedestals, or most of them anyway. So
no, Francis certainly wasn't, and I really didn't know who Francis was. I knew who Lucas was because of THX 1138 4EB, his college thesis film he did, that Francis saw and said, hey, do you want to turn that into a full-length movie? And I knew they were making that into a full-length movie. So I knew who George was even then. But Francis I wasn't real clear on. He was just this really nice guy that owned the studio.
I know you, one of the reasons I called you up boldly, going where no man had gone before, was around NASA, and really you were looking at the time to do a movie about along the lines of why aren't we on Mars today? Why aren't we sitting there? What happened to when I was 3 and 5? We're supposed to be there by now.
We still plan to do that film, but I put it on hold because we needed to do something that could bring in the revenue. So we went to a series because I really don't want to go and seek outside financing. Every time I've ever done that on a motion picture, I don't get to make the film I want to make. I get the film they want to make, which I don't know why they just didn't make it themselves in the first place and leave me out, but that's how it works, and I'm tired of that. So I'm in control of this project we're doing now, which is called But Something Is There. I'm working with Whitley Strieber, who's a very famous science fiction and horror author, and I know that I can get this first pilot made and I can get it online and I can make some money with it, and if it goes to a second and a third and turns into a series, that now I have money coming in so I can actually start making that picture, which is about a 60-year-old astrophysicist, a woman who is tired of waiting. She wants her chance to go to space, and so she takes it on her own initiative and designs a way to create an engine that will be able to pilot a small craft at warp speeds to Alpha Centauri, making a few neat stops along the way. So,
I know Leon Alkali from JPL, and he's describing in M drives that they think they're maybe a little closer than, or hopefully they're going down that.
Yeah, he told
path.
me that too. Yeah,
and he'd love to. Every astrophysicist in the world wants to consult,
sure,
and try and get the science right, and make sure that it's not just filled with monsters and women with large hands.
Exactly, and space battles and all that kind of stuff. And really, I think our culture feels that being able to actually go to another star system is 200-300 years away, and in fact, it's not. It's much closer than that. And if I recall, my well-meaning adults in the late 50s telling me, oh, we'll never get to the moon until 2015 if we get there at all. It's impossible. And yet, from 1961 to 1969, we went from Mercury and a little hop up into the atmosphere and down again to landing on the moon. I think that we can achieve interstellar capability very, very quickly if we really want to. And I think they are.
Well, yeah, you're starting to talk a little bit, and we'll get back to
sure.
Just about. Have you ever produced a movie, and how that experience seems to have scarred you for life?
Yeah.
So.
Well, when I came to, after the American Zoetrope sort of closed down, and Francis, after the conversation, left and came down to LA, I also moved down to LA, and I, in that time, had learned, because I've always been an artist and a sculptor, how to do prosthetic work and creature work. Planet of the Apes got my interest. I wanted to replicate that makeup. I had a lot of fun with it and did that, and it got the attention of people in LA who put me to work when I came down here. So I started work in the makeup union working on the TV show Planet of the Apes, and it led to many other films. But somewhere in there I made a film, and it was a fun science fiction film, and it was just brutalized by the people paying for it. It was a very bad experience. So after the film ended, and it actually did well in the theaters, amazingly, but after it ended, I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth, and I said, well, I'll get back to filmmaking. I've got a steady job here. I can work on films, work on kinds of neat films, and work with great directors, learn and plot and do creature work and do prosthetics and do acting, which I also did as creatures in movies. And somewhere along the line, I just kind of lost my way and never went back to filmmaking till more recently.
Well, you found your way. I think when I came by your studio, you just received a book, and you were in there looking for yourself a movie, Ghostbusters, I think.
Oh, the Ghostbusters. Yeah, well, yeah. I consulted on the book. They did an interview. I gave them pictures and stuff. Sure. You know.
And which were any of those creatures yours, or are you
Oh,
behind
yeah.
the creature there?
No,
So which were yours? Share with us.
The scene that I'm most known for is the scene where Sigourney Weaver is talking to her mom, and she sits down in the chair, the armchair, and she puts the phone down after she's done talking to her mom, and she sees the door start to breathe in and out, and then the arm bursts out and grabs her, shoves her head back. That's me. And then my two friends, who were also Screen Actors Guild puppeteers, did the other two arms and puppeteered those. That whole scene took a few days to shoot. It was very well engineered. And we worked a long time on sculpting and making the arms and puppeteering. But I also puppeteered in the Pterodog, inside the plaster statues that broke open. At one point I'm in the Pterodog, and I worked on a lot of the other creature stuff throughout the show. So
This young man is really behind the scenes in Hollywood. So how did you continue? What's the life like for somebody? Everybody wants to be, I don't know, a production assistant for somebody, and ends up you're just getting coffee and bagels and not paying off tickets.
Well, I did that at the Zoetrope with Francis Coppola. But I got to be really good friends with him, and so it was a little bit more in that. I mean, I had an Alfa Romeo, and it used to break down a lot, and he would drive me home and things like that. So it was very friendly. I've been since in situations like that where I'm working on a show and I see those PAs not having that kind of situation that I did. But I have done that, and I think everybody has to kind of get your foot in the door. So. But if I'm going to have, like we're looking for interns now, they're going to be treated well.
Well, what kind of, in terms of an intern, because hopefully you won't get flooded with more than a couple thousand applications here. When I was there, I'm trying to remember, well, you had the Martian head there.
Yeah.
And you were building up, I think you were building, I'm trying to remember what you started with styrofoam for the head, and then the body. So how do you go about constructing something? You're not in steel. You're using molding
it depends
techniques.
on what it is. But in terms of a creature, a lot of times, especially in the 80s and in the 90s, when we were doing more practical effects than CGI, it depended on what it was, but usually we would sculpt in clay a very realistic rendition of the creature and make what's kind of like plaster molds, but it's really much harder material than that, or silicone molds, and produce silicone or foam rubber skins that we could articulate and make move. And of course, there were puppet bodies made the same way, and everything was grafted together, the heads and everything else, and we had people operating the arms and pulling controls to make the hands move and change the expression on the face. And that's still being done, and it's being done, much to my surprise, by young filmmakers who were kind of tired of CGI. So yes, that creature's not going to get up and run. As my friend Doug Drexler says, let's see it run, Obviously, that's where we're going to use CG, and we're going to have a nice wireframe built, and we're going to probably motion cap the movements or hand animate, depending. And so we can show it running and jumping and stuff, but in close-ups, we're going to work with a real physical puppet it just looks better, at least to me. I mean, every director, every filmmaker is different, but, and the same thing goes for miniatures and models. In Interstellar, I'm leaving one out, more recent. Oh yes, The Martian. A lot of the miniatures you saw were in fact miniatures, physical miniatures, very large models, because the directors prefer using them. They just work better. It's a real object in a real lighting situation. So, I mean, when you have it take off and fly up out of the atmosphere, then that would be CG. So there's really, I think the whole love affair with CG, that it can be used for everything, is starting to become more reasonable. Well, CG will work good for this, practical will work, but we use the two together and create the best possible effects. So,
well, just watching you, you work at. Dog was barking, but everything has a certain time to it in terms of mixing the clays or mixing whatever it is that you're molding, and then the way
that was foam rubber, yeah, sure.
The way you keep everything clean. I mean, my wife is always after me, you know.
Right.
If you open it up, close it up, put it away, and that kind of habit, I'm hoping that your interns will pick up.
I was taught that by the people I interned with. I was being paid. I wasn't really an intern, but I did apprentice for people like John Chambers, who was the man who created the makeup for Planet of the Apes. Much, much more than that, but you know, Outer Limits and all kinds of stuff. But he was one of my heroes, and he was always lab coat. Everything was clean. It was like NASA. You used the tool, you put it back. If you made a mess, you immediately cleaned it up, and you treated the whole craft with respect. And so I think that's necessary. But artists can be very messy, and I can myself. And you kind of get involved in things, and you start losing sight of that. You know, it's hard, and you know, but I prefer to be neat if I can.
Well, we were talking earlier. Some of the people who've applied for this position are people who are going to be beauticians or trying to do maybe. So, what will they learn from you? I know you'd also had prosthetics and talking about molding. What kinds of molds do you see these people learning, and how do they turn that into a business for themselves?
Well, they want to learn how to make, they want to either be able to take a human being and turn them into a creature, or an older person, you know, age them, do age makeup, do gore makeup, do zombie makeup, do werewolves or like alien creatures. They want to have the ability to be unlimited in what they can do with that craft. So they want to learn sculpting. It all starts with life or body casting, life cast, ear cast, body cast, and then being able to take those casts and sculpt your design onto it and be able to make the proper molds. And the molds can range from being plaster molds, which hardly anyone uses anymore. We use stones, very hard stones, epoxy, fiberglass molds, silicone, or silicone backed up by epoxy glass, because silicone's very flexible, you need a mother mold. Working with silicones, working with foam rubber, working with latex, and working with all the application chemicals and makeups that are used to, once you have those prosthetics, apply to a face, and how you blend them in so they look real, not like a mask, and how they move well. They want to know all this stuff, because a lot of the beautician schools, the makeup schools that you can go to, don't teach this stuff. Thankfully, Rob Berman, a friend of mine who is the son of the very famous Tom Berman, he has his own school that he has in LA. But there's nobody up here doing this stuff.
Well, when I was there,
I know of.
I saw some molds for earpieces there. But what was your experience with Leonard Nimoy in terms of, you were right there at the beginning, I guess.
Well, pretty much. I mean, when I came to Los Angeles initially, the first person I met was Rick Baker, who, and he'd only done a couple of movies at the time. We became friends, and as time went by and he started getting bigger films, he started giving me his seconds, you know, which really helped. And then I met Bob Schiffer at Disney, who had been Disney's premier or main makeup artist for years and years and years. He did everything from Birdman and Alcatraz to the Shaggy Dog. And he stayed working there until his 80s. He knew Fred Phillips. I met Fred Phillips. Now, Fred Phillips is the man who did the makeups for The Outer Limits, which was one of my favorite science fiction TV shows prior to Star Trek. And then he did Star Trek. And Fred was a wonderful human being. And we met, we became friends. And to make a long story really short, Bob Schiffer asked me to do a Shaggy dog makeup. He was called to do it, but couldn't because he was under contract with Disney. And it wasn't a Shaggy dog, it was called McDuff, but it was the same thing. So I took the job, I did the job, and Fred Phillips, I got the job to put the appliances on set. And Fred repaid that favor by calling me up one day and asking me on the phone, do you want to work on Star Trek? And I thought he was joking because Star Trek was over with. Mm-hmm. He said, no, we're doing a movie. And the first thing he asked me to do were Leonard Nimoy's ears. And Spock was my favorite character. I remember watching that show and reading the book, The Making of Star Trek, and just saying to myself, God, wouldn't it be neat if I could go to Hollywood and meet them and be on that set and see how they did all that stuff. And that's exactly what happened to me. I ended up working on the first film, and the first job was doing Leonard Nimoy's ears.
And so, and now that, tell me about the movie his son is making too. You've been very involved in that as well.
Yeah, well, when I first saw the Kickstarter campaign, I was told about it, and it's called For the Love of Spock. Now, this is a documentary that Adam Nimoy and his dad wanted to do together, but as we all know, Nimoy got very ill and he passed away. So Adam wanted to continue on, and he definitely did. He started a Kickstarter campaign. Well, I didn't know if he realized there was someone still alive that did his dad's ears or even had the mold still, so I contacted him and I said, look, is there anything I can do to help you raise the money on this thing? Because the fans weren't very forthcoming. A lot of the fans had an attitude, why does he need our money when he's got all his father's money? And really, that's none of their business, and we don't know that he has all his father's money. I mean, it was just really nasty, so I wanted to help. So I offered the ears in shadow boxes, and I said we could both sign them because I did your dad's ears and you're his son, and we can offer those as perks for people who donate $1,000 or more. So he thought that was a great thing. And then I said, you know, I can take this further. We can offer that one of the perks is you can have your ears cast and you can get made up and have your own Spock ears made for you and experience what Leonard went through all those years ago as one of the perks. Well, that was like $6,500 and no one went for that one. But he said, hey, could you do this for the documentary? Could we recreate how they were done? And so that's what ended up happening, and they sent the camera crew up and shot me making molds off the ears of his assistant, Kai, and then they came back with Adam when they were all done weeks later to apply them, and then Adam and I signed the shadow boxes together, and it was really, really cool. It was neat.
Well, we were talking earlier, you're going on a trip to New York to fit somebody with the ears.
I can't get away from Mr. Spock, which is fine. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are a number of fan Star Trek TV series shows that are identical to the original Star Trek show in the 60s. These are not just, you know, little tinfoil sets. These fans have money and they love Star Trek. And they have, James Cawley and one other group have built all the sets accurately to the way they were done at Desilu all those years ago. And they even found out what fabrics they used and have them recreated in China, all the props, everything are the way they did back then. And so they're making all new shows. One's called Star Trek Continues, the other one's called Star Trek Phase 2, and I'm working on Star Trek Phase 2, recreating Spock's ears. So I'll be going to New York this summer. I get to go on the Enterprise, which I've always wanted to do since I was a kid, and the Enterprise, the original, and be on the bridge and do the makeup, and that's real exciting. To be at this age now, and it's still going on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's wonderful.
Well, and you have a studio here in Ventura, and you have some office or some open hours there. Do people get to sit in a special chair there? Or?
You're talking about the captain's chair. Yes, it's true. I built the captain's chair, and I researched the chair, and I found a whole bunch of great people. One named Keith Marshall, who's a friend of mine, who, with great care and great love, found out exactly how that chair was made, what chair was inside of it. it was a chair that was popular during the, oh God, what was the name of it? It was a, can't remember the name, but he found one in a dentist office from the 60s. It was still there, and they took it all apart and made CAD drawings of the whole thing so we could replicate every single part of it. So the chair is actually built the way the real chair was made. It was called a Madison chair.
We're getting close to finishing here. So how can we support you? I know you have a series on your website there, where people get to follow the making of things.
Yeah, we offer through Patreon.com.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, people can subscribe to our Patreon account, which enables them to see all our content. Some of it's free, some of it is video on demand, which they see through VHX. Because some of the shows we do are very instructional and they're very, very long, and they show you exactly how to do things that you might want to know how to do, and we charge a very small fee for that. And the rest of it's free. We do a weekly show showing what goes on live at the studio every week. We try to keep it to weekly. We missed 2 weeks last month because we've been so busy with our TV show, but the show going up tonight is 1 hour and 37 minutes long. And you will know how Spock ears are made.
Well,
yeah.
Steve Neill, thank you so much. Thanks for coming to
Thank
Ventura
you.
3 years ago. And
I'm not leaving.
Ventura, he's not leaving, neither should you, but it is time to get moving to SNG and Patreon.